All righty. Welcome, everybody. We are live here in DC at the Counter-UAS Homeland Security Conference, and got a great panel. Wanted to talk about a few topics surrounding Counter-UAS, or not just drone detection, but drone mitigation, and what that means exactly, what it means for state and local folks, whether it's law enforcement or corrections, and different critical infrastructure groups. I'm also joined in the background by Brandon Youngblood. Thank you so much, Brandon, for being here. He's helping man the virtual house here today as we're going live. So otherwise, joined by a few amazing panelists, and wanted to do some brief introductions and kind of get an idea from each one of you what brings you to the table today, or to the actual conference. The Homeland Security Conference here is a little bit more focused on, I think, federal and government agencies talking about counter-UAS, what's going on, in their agencies. But you guys have been part of the conversation around critical infrastructure, law enforcement, from your backgrounds, New Jersey State Police and Texas DPS, and of course, Tom Adams, DroneShield, and also a major background in counter-UAS. If I could have you just do a brief introduction and then just share some thoughts about what brought you to this discussion here this week, and then we'll get into some other questions. That'd be great.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mike Ward. I'm a lieutenant with New Jersey State Police, overseeing the UAS, counter-UAS programs. Big topic this week, common theme is education and partnerships, and that's why we're here for the conference.
Okay, that was short and sweet.
Let's go. Sorry.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Jason Day, I'm the Director of Unmanned Aircraft for the Texas Department of Public Safety. To the same point, right? Events like this allows stakeholders, partners, collaborators to come together and have frank conversations. And it brings in people who need to hear the challenges we're actually facing out in the real world. Obviously, the problem is, the federal government's kind of in its own little silo, and things in here that happen here in DC, sometimes they get filtered about what's actually going on at the prisons, what's going on around critical infrastructure, what's going on along the border, and even in all the cities across the nation. And so bringing light and bringing real world context into those conversations is extremely important. And, we at DPS and everybody that was on the panel, and really everybody that's in this room, we're all about the same mission, right? We're about how can we increase this knowledge and education for good? And hugs and high fives are really a big part of that, right? Getting out there, building that network, having those friends to be able to share that information across the entire network.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. My name is Tom Adams. I'm the Director of Public Safety for DroneShield. What brought us here is we're exhibiting at the conference, and with it being a Homeland Security focused conference, to me, Homeland Security means, it really means public safety as well as owners and operators of critical infrastructure. So it's counter-UAS is a team sport. It includes state, local, federal. It includes owners and operators of critical infrastructure. It includes a wide range of people that can all contribute to different parts of this mission. So that's why I'm here.
Sweet. And then, Tom, would you mind, just for context for folks, can you just share in brief the difference between drone detection and mitigation, and where that lies in legislation as well, if those two things are separate, or if they're kind of bundled together?
A lot of times they're treated separately. There's a lot of different federal laws on the books that can impact the execution of both detection and mitigation type missions. But generally, for the most part, most people consider mitigation to be the use of technologies to disrupt, disable, or destroy a drone. However, you can use detection technologies to mitigate drone risks in the airspace by finding and locating the pilot and asking him or her to land the drone. So there's a lot of different ways in which you can use the technology. The important piece, I'll be quite honest with you, I know a lot of people get focused on the mitigation piece, but the core foundational aspect of your counter-UAS program is the drone detection piece, because it allows you to at least see or have a better chance of seeing what's in the low-level airspace, and then you can assess those threats if they are threats, and then react if necessary. So to me, those are some of the big components, and I'm sure a lot of people have. There's some hearings going on today on Capitol Hill, which I'll listen to on the way home tonight. Anxious to kind of hear the comments of a lot of the people that are speaking. There's some great people out there speaking today, so I'm kind of curious to hear what's happening. But we may hopefully see some progression in that legislation this year.
Absolutely. And also, I'll just mention one thing real quick, guys. We are live, so if you have comments or questions, looks like Kevin, thanks for sending in some thoughts. Send them in as we're live. We're only going to have a few minutes today. We'll probably go for about until the half hour, till about 1:30 p.m. At the conference. But thanks for engaging, and please be sending in those thoughts and questions as we go. And we'll try to answer some of them live if we can. With that, Jason, a couple days ago, we were starting to talk about mitigating drones. What does that mean? What does that entail? You mentioned you don't love the statement, I think you've said, but you've mentioned the crawl, walk, run kind of methodology of like what it's probably going to take realistically to allow state and local folks to be able to quote unquote mitigate a drone, to like actually stop it in flight if it's flying over a prison and dropping contraband, or flying over an airport and gonna get in the flight path of an airplane. What are they allowed to do? And a lot of folks want it to happen now. They just want to have access to the technology, be able to hit the button, knock these things down. But do you have any just thoughts, even just springboarding off of kind of what you had commented the other night, that could give people a little context?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start with this. On the mitigation side, every agency that's out there, every entity that operates drones has some mitigation ability already, and that begins with the education piece, right? A low percentage of all the drones that are in the air and over critical infrastructures, or even over your urban environments, are actually nefarious in any way. They're the careless and the clueless, right? Little Timmy went out and bought a drone. He's flying over the Capitol. He's flying over people. He doesn't even know he's doing anything wrong. So getting out there and educating the public, getting with STEM programs, with different schools, universities, and educating the overall community will solve probably half the problem. Because a lot of times law enforcement, even on the federal level, they see drones in the air and it's like, oh, Hulk smash, right? I've got all these bad drones that are going on, but they're not bad. We see drones along the border, and if you're just saying, oh, drone, and it's crossing the border, you're like, oh, that's going to be bad. But then when you start dialing into the information, you're like, oh, it's a Mavic Mini 2 SE. Are the cartels using that for ISR along the border? No. That's somebody on the other side bought a drone. They're having some fun. So we have to educate everybody so that they are aware of all that airspace. But then, this big push amongst all of us is this pilot program. And how do we get actual mitigation technology in the hands of the people that actually need it, the boots on the ground? And we are big proponents for this. DPS hopes to be part of this pilot program. But I think a lot of the methodology behind it is wrong. And it even goes along with public safety UAS operations in general. The FAA is making it very easy to do a lot of things, DFR, beyond visual line of sight, and that is all great. That is all needed. But a lot of agencies are not ready for all of those steps, right? They have a drone, not a drone program. And those are two very different things. They haven't matured to the level. They haven't been operating long enough to have figured out all the things to do this safely. That's what it's all about. It's all about the safety of the national airspace and the safety of the people on the ground. So when you get into the pilot program, it can't just be, hey, put in an application, and if you can check some boxes on this piece of paper, you can have mitigation authority for these certain use cases. And the thought process right now that we're hearing is, either DHS or the FBI or some agency like that would have a training program, and they might oversee this entire pilot program. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think it needs to be public safety coming together, build a council of professional public safety UAS programs for our own oversight. We develop the training curriculums, we develop the ConOps, and we audit every entity that is allowed to be part of this pilot program. And we do it very slowly, methodically, and with an emphasis on safety, that crawl, walk, run mentality. And we start with very limited use cases. There are places where mitigation has very little collateral damage. If you think about along the border, you build an electronic wall along that international border there, right over the river. What is the threat to just regular drones that are flying around? It's very low. Over prisons, not a lot of people are just having fun flying over prisons or critical infrastructure, nuclear power plants, things like that. So you start at that scale. You learn lessons, you learn mitigation techniques and how that button is being pushed and if it's actually effective. And then you roll that out on a larger scale across the country.
Absolutely. And if anything, we need to hopefully get those pilot programs started, right? That's
the
what
key
starts the
right
timeline,
there.
right?
Yes.
One thing, Mike, that you were talking about is collaboration as well between all the different counties that you guys work with within New Jersey. And, obviously you're part of the state police, but then you have all these, I think it's 21 counties or something involved. And no, don't let me misspeak.
I think it's 26.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Well, I was just going to hear, your thoughts on how to try to bring that education, or how something like pilot program with mitigation would have to roll out in your context where there's so many 26 different counties that might need to be involved. Any thoughts on that and just kind of collaborating?
Yeah, no, I think that in New Jersey, as far as the drone programs go, everyone started around 2015, 2017. So a lot of the local police departments that have drone programs, they're all just doing their own thing. And that's one thing we're trying to do, is bring the drone operators together for common training. And the same thing, I think, but we're backtracking now because these programs have been running in the different agencies. I think with the Counter-UAS, we're at a good point where if the counties were going to start investing in equipment or deploying, that it's early enough that we could bring them together and train them up.
Excellent. So do you guys have any thoughts? I do have some questions. I'm going to try to pull some of those up coming through. Thanks, guys, again for your interaction. And I see Chris on there as well. It's Kevin. I guess why not just roll it out quickly? I mean, and a lot of folks out there may know, but I think some don't realize, because they just say, give me hand it to me and let me start bringing them down. Why not? What are some of the risks? Can we detail a couple of those? You guys, yeah.
So the reason that this technology is not widely rolled out at this point, not only are there some federal laws that limit the use of these technologies because they can violate federal laws, and that's why the four agencies that can do it, they've been given legislative relief from those particular federal criminal statutes. Something to keep in mind is that the use of these technologies increases the risk to the national airspace, potentially the communication spectrum if you're using some jamming type techniques, and it can also increase the risk to the critical infrastructure and the public that you're trying to protect. So it adds risk. There's no risk. There's no mitigation method that doesn't increase risk, or that doesn't have risks associated with it. So I'll give you an example. If you have your typical FPV drone is not GPS capable, and it's not capable of stabilizing itself in flight without inputs from the pilot. If you were to jam something like that, it may just crash to the ground based on the trajectory that it's flying and the speed, and it's going to hit the ground. And if you decide that it's enough of a threat to take action, you are assuming responsibility for that action. And so if it hits a child in a stroller, well, you're the one that made the decision to mitigate that drone, and hopefully it wasn't just some random drone flying around. It was something that was actually a legitimate threat and not just happened to be in the airspace. So I use that kind of as an example, but there's risk associated with using this technology. And so we have to implement it carefully and very selectively. There has to be training involved. I agree with Jason that the public safety community should absolutely be involved in the development of the curriculum, but I think we shouldn't. It's important to keep in mind that both DOJ and DHS have been doing the mitigation mission for some time, and so I think they would be good people to have at the table also to kind of help build that. But 100% public safety should be involved with the development of the curriculum and the continued development of TTPs as we learn more things going forward. So it needs to be, it shouldn't just be all fed, it should be fed, state, local, other agencies that that are stakeholders such as the FCC, FAA, and others. So it needs to be a collaborative effort between everybody. But I think, Jason's on the right track. It can't just be a siloed process at all.
The other part is the concerns of collateral damage in the national airspace system is obviously the biggest concern. When you do whatever to take over that drone or jam that drone or send it in a different direction, you never know what's potentially going to happen. But there's also a huge risk to all the other infrastructure around you. And I cannot remember somebody who told me this story, but imagine you are out there, you think you have a threatening drone, you've got some type of jammer that's going to jam 2, 4, and 5, 8 and just blast a huge signal and say, I'm going to Hulk smash everything that's in this cone right here and wipe out the 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz. And you're like, well, if some people's Wi-Fi, gets messed up, or Starbucks, their Wi-Fi is, that's okay. That's worth the risk. But what they don't know is over in that building right over there, there is somebody who is on a medical device that is connected to the internet that is actually keeping them alive, and it's keeping that drip going. And when it loses its internet connection, it can no longer manage the health of that person. And so you jam all of this. By the time technicians can get in there to restore that internet connection, that person is dead. So you just mitigated the potential threat of this drone, but potentially kill this person. How do you don't even know that risk exists, right? But that's potential collateral damage from this technology.
Well,
Yeah, something else to consider too is this is a very one of the things that I've always said, what makes you a better counter-UAS operator is that you need to be a drone nerd. You need to understand, you need to be a drone pilot. You need to understand the different protocols, the different makes and models, how drones are being used, not only for good, but for nefarious purposes. And then to Jason's point, sometimes when you jam drones, they go into its lost link protocol, and that drone could go up to a height that you don't know what that's pre-programmed to be. And there's other things that exist in that airspace, potentially up to 1,500 feet. And there are actually times when a decision to not take action has been made because it may increase the risk to other aircraft in the airspace. And you just can't hand somebody a system and say, go use it. There has to be a lot of training and a lot of table topping and a lot of discussions that go on to be able to properly deploy this technology. You just can't hand somebody a jamming gun and say, go for it.
Yeah, locating the operator should always be the primary focus of the missions. And just knowing how the equipment works and what, signals you might see is critical. But it takes time and training. It takes trial and error. It takes starting with, a small system and then working with that, and then having other left of launch initiatives, in training and trying to locate the operator. So yeah, to just give an easy button is the wrong move.
it's good insight. I mean, even the real world kind of stories of what could happen, right? It gives you that context. Somebody said, great statement here. If you guys have any more to say about this, we have about 10 minutes left, everybody. So keep sending in the questions. Chris Schaefer said, there's so much effort focused on jamming. What about everything else that goes into it? Back to our earlier conversation. There are steps to CUAS. Jamming is the last step in this process. Education, training, and safety are the key steps before jamming happens. He says, do not pass go, do not collect 200 until those efforts are completed and validated. But I know you spoke to that already. Do you guys have any more? I at least wanted to highlight, folks calling in, but if you have anything to say off that.
Well, I'll stay on the education one because for us, that's easy, right? Texas DPS, we teach enforcing drone laws and drone education at the recruit level for our department now. So every new trooper for the past 2 years has been trained on this. And I said this on the panel we were on earlier, but those people then become ambassadors and their network starts to learn about what all the rules are, right? Because their moms, their dads, their PTA presidents, they're on the board for, different events and societies and companies, and they can educate their bubble. And then all of those bubbles start to intersect, and that education effort gets out to everybody. And that's where we really have to start. And then on the public safety, more specifically the law enforcement side, you have to not assume that that drone is adversarial, because again, most of the time it's going to be little Timmy, right? For example, at the Texas Capitol in Austin, you're not allowed to launch or land from Capitol grounds and fly over the Capitol complex. But does a 16-year-old who's doing a class project on the Capitol know that? Obviously not. Is Texas DPS going to arrest little Timmy for flying his drone around the Capitol complex? Absolutely not. But we're going to have a conversation with him, and we're going to have a conversation with mom and dad so that he knows how he can do it in compliance with regulations in the future. And then he'll start to learn more, and he'll pass that along to my friends, right? Having that learning experience is best for the entire community.
Do you have a thought?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, talking about Timmy at the State House, we have informational brochures with QR codes. So, you walk up to someone that's flying a drone and, you're a trooper in uniform and they get nervous. So being able to leave them with something and make it more of an informative interaction as opposed to a hostile, I'm going to seize your drone and you're under arrest. But I think that's a good, tool to have. This is something to hand out.
That's great. So in the last few minutes here, some people are talking about little Timmy in the comments now, poor guy. But I'll read that in a second. But last few minutes here, do you guys have any thoughts on what help you need? I mean, as an agency, or from essentially just from all of us, from viewers, from citizens, that are concerned or that love to fly drones or whatever the case. Like, I don't know that they even know how to get involved. Whether they're out there anywhere, in the U.S. or world, but maybe speak to people that are, closer to home too. I mean, in New Jersey or in Texas. But any thoughts on just how can we help further the UAS industry and help bring more security to critical infrastructure? Any kind of final thoughts on that?
I don't have anything specific on that. I don't think. I think education is always going to be a key strategy that Jason and Mike have talked about. There's a lot to learn. I really like what there's a lot of states that have been leaning forward on these missions. Obviously New Jersey, Texas, Connecticut, Virginia, and I know there's a bunch of others who are out there, doing this mission, trying to learn lessons within the left and right limits that they've been given at this point. So I think someone said yesterday at one of the panels is that we shouldn't let the pursuit of perfection really stop us from getting going and starting to learn these lessons. Let's do the mission safely and thoughtfully. And even if we only have 80%, 85% of the solution or knowledge that we need, let's start building that other 15%, because a lot of it is operational based. I would say that, I can't speak for Mike and Jason, but I can't imagine that there aren't some operational lessons learned that they would have never learned if they hadn't gone out and started deploying and using the technology and seeing what they need to do. That's how the education has come up, and they've had some initiatives. It's been great listening to them on the panels to see some of the things that they've done to try to make this better. But that's where we've got to go. And I applaud what a lot of agencies are doing without a lot of help and guidance from the federal government. So they've done a good job.
From my perspective, it's all about crowdsourcing and your audience's network, right? Because somebody knows somebody who is eventually going to know somebody that can help with this entire problem. We can continue to push that rock up the hill and encourage our federal partners to push through this pilot program and to allow this technology to actually get in the hands of those who need it. But it needs to be encouraged from your average citizen across the nation. And the people that are listening right now are obviously into this technology. They want to hear this conversation. They need to have it with somebody else, because that somebody else might have a friend who's a legislator, maybe on the statewide level that now has a friend or the ear of somebody on the federal level. And if this is all coming from all directions, you cannot avoid it any longer, right? Because the folks here in DC, they kind of get blinders on, and we on the statewide level, we do too. I was hoping, even though it was a horrible event, that drone crashing into that airplane in LA would wake some people up. But then other things happen and national attention goes other directions and the blinders come back on, and now you're focused on something else, right? And conferences like this, everybody's, all cheerleaders. Yeah, go, go, go. Let's make something happen. And everybody goes out the door and they go back to work and they have to do their day job. And then this kind of gets pushed to the side. So you have to continue to have these champions. And those of us that are champions on this, we are getting tired of having the same conversation and preaching to the choir on all of this and nobody actually listening.
Well said.
I guess my final thoughts in closing would be for any agencies that are looking at this or trying to address a problem and they haven't started a program. Find your drone operators, and they're the most educated at this point, and steer them in that direction of Counter-UAS, and start with a small system, if anything, and work on those left of launch initiatives and the educational handouts, and then just build from there. Because I think that you're going to have to, for this proposed list of agencies to get mitigation, I think you have to do the crawl, walk, run before you would be, considered for that. So I think years ago when we started, someone's like, "Oh, you can't do mitigation." I'm like, "Well, there has to be something we can do." So we've built out a program, to detect and track as best we can and locate the operators. And there's something that can be done. And until these authorities are changed, we'll just keep trucking along with what we got and making it work. But there's something that can be done at any level.
It's good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and expertise, gentlemen. And thanks everybody for listening in and sending in comments. I'll have to go back after the fact and reply to some of those. Thank you so much. Wish we had more time today, but we are coming to you live here from an event, and there's more things happening here right after this call. So thanks again. We'll see you next week, and have a great week, everybody.